Welcome back to my first flip. Now I know jumping into your first flip can be terrifying. I know I was scared because you never truly know what's going on with the house until you get underneath it and inside it and start tearing it apart. So I'm just gonna go over some stuff that I've learned so far, places I messed up, so that when you guys jump into your first flip, you don't make the same mistakes that I made. So first, let's talk about what a change order is. A change order is when something comes up that's outside of the initial bid and scope of work that you have with your contractor, and it's gonna be an additional charge because it wasn't included. So in our instance, once they started tearing up the floors and getting underneath the house, they found that a pipe had burst. So in our case, when they got underneath the house, they had to get rid of all the galvanized and iron pipes that were there. They were actually eroding. One of them was leaking and it was causing the foundation to become soggy and causing the cement piers that the house sits on to sink into the ground. So that ended up being the cause of the reason the floors were uneven and there's a big dip in the middle of the kitchen. So for the labor and the materials to fix the pipe, and we actually ended up just wanting to change out most of the pipe and plumbing so that the house would qualify for an FHA mortgage when we go to sell it, that was gonna run us about $2,000. The second issue that was gonna be added to the change order was the actual electric that we have running through the house. So the electric was actually the old cloth wiring, which is a fire hazard and super outdated. So in order to have this be able to qualify for a mortgage for the end buyer, we were gonna have to change that out. Now that was gonna run us about $500. Then we have to go to the actual repair of the dip in the floor, which still isn't even completely fixed yet. They're coming back next week to go back under and hit it again. But that was another $500 added to the change order. Last but not least, we needed to add new cool air intake so that we didn't burn out our furnace and so that the house again would qualify for mortgages for the end buyer. So altogether, our change order came to $3,350. Now that sucks. That cuts into your profit and it may seem bad, but if you think ahead and you factor in 10 to 20% of your rehab budget for change orders, then you should still be okay. In our instance, we had budgeted $27,500 for our rehab according to our initial bid, but we add in the change order, which was $2,000 for the pipes and the plumbing, $500 for the cool air return, $500 to update that old cloth wiring, and $350 to fix the dip in the floor for a total of $3,350 change order. So that puts our total rehab budget at $30,850. Now, if you factor in all of our numbers, we bought the house for $22,000. That brings our total all-in cost to $52,850. Now, we'll still probably be able to get at least $90,000 when we sell the house. That would still keep our total profit at $37,150, which for a flip is not bad. When I first learned, I was told you were supposed to make a minimum of $20,000 per flip. A lot of my friends that are flippers, I know they've made $10,000, $15,000 on huge flips. So if we're able to pull almost 40 grand out of this tiny flip I got going on, and it being my first one, consider it a huge success. Now, some of these change orders could have been avoided if I had done my proper due diligence and made sure of certain things from the beginning. For example, I was told I could have just pulled out one of the outlets and looked at the wiring in there to establish that it was cloth wiring, and we could have had that written into the initial bid so that it didn't come up later. Now, we still would have had to pay for it, so the price still would have been the same, but it stops you from getting surprised and maybe going over budget and screwing yourself when it comes to the end. The pipe, we could have crawled underneath the house into the crawl space, had, a plumber go look at it, etc., etc. However, we didn't think about that, and the contractors that did come to give us the bid didn't crawl under the house, and it just wasn't something that was on my radar at that time. And that would have been a huge one, since that's gonna end up costing $2,000. If we had known that in advance, we could have maybe adjusted how much we tried to buy the house for initially, so that we could have kind of kept our profit right around that $40,000 mark. Now, the issue with some of these things is we did not own the house when we had the contractors come here to give us bids. We had it under contract. I had a great relationship with the seller. It was an off-market property. We knew that it was going to close, but we were clearing up some title issues because we actually have the lot next door that we're probably gonna try to build another house on. So we were trying to figure all that out, but we didn't want to wait to get our bids. So we had the contractors come through while we were still in escrow. So we weren't able to just tear apart the house and look at everything because we didn't own it yet. So that's another thing that if we had waited to get our estimate till after we owned it, we could have dug into it properly and got more accurate numbers. But that's the gamble that you take when you flip houses, but most of the time you're not gonna buy a house without doing a full inspection first. But all in all, we're still sitting super pretty. I'm super happy, and I think this is gonna go really well. If you guys have any questions pertaining to my flip, or you're trying to start your first flip and you need advice, hit me down below in the comments, shoot me a DM on Instagram, contact me however you need to. I'd love to help you out. So that's it, everybody. You're in Jamestown now, so relax, take some notes, and let's make some fucking money.